Abortions on the basis of gender or race, can you understand how people may support legislation that ban that?
As I've tried to say, I appreciate that people have a lot of different views on the issue of abortion, and there's any number of different pieces of legislation you could describe. And I think fundamentally at Planned Parenthood, we take the position that we trust women to make their decisions about their pregnancies. I've made my own decisions as well, and so I feel like I can
Richards,
kind of walk in these shoes.
I appreciate the way you like to frame the issue, that you're the reasonable one, and those of us who have a contrary position are not reasonable.
I didn't say that.
No, that's exactly the last answer you gave. That's exactly what it was. Much like your people evolved to a more advanced viewpoint, much like that comment was also directed to that.
Those are not the words I said. I said sometimes people change their opinions.
No, it's not always what you say. Sometimes it's just what you mean.
Well,
in 2014, you disagreed with my colleague's 100% figure. What percent of your money did go to Democrat candidates in 2014 if it wasn't 100%?
I told him I will look. I know that we support Republicans across the country. I wish there were more Republicans.
Name me some. Name me some Republicans in Congress that you support.
Well, I don't actually want. In this public forum, I'm not going to raise their names because they have been such the target of their fellow party members, but I'm happy to provide that to you later.
Well, the donations are public.
Mm-hmm. And some of them, yes, I don't know in terms of federal office. I was thinking more broadly in terms of support for candidates across the country. I know there are Republicans that we support. And again, we would like to support more Republicans for office. We wish there was, we don't believe that women's health or women's rights should be a partisan issue.
And we don't think eating dinner salads and drinking wine while you're discussing infanticide, we have a problem with that too. So I'm sure you can understand why we would be as viscerally opposed to what we saw on some of the tapes. Would you not?
I just think we may have feel like everything I've answered you see in a different way. So I respect your opinions. And
on that, joining us now, South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy has joined the effort to defund Planned Parenthood. And the stakes could be pretty high here. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
All right. You've done something you don't often do, which is sign your name on a letter with other members of Congress, basically standing up and saying, this is my position. I'm not going to move from it. In this case, you all are saying, basically, you're not going to vote for any funding measure that includes continued funding for Planned Parenthood. And you know that you're going to be on a collision course with possibly being responsible for being accused of shutting down the government if you maintain this position. So why are you taking it?
Well, because I don't believe in infanticide, Shannon, and there are certain things that define us as a decent people, as people of good conscience. And when you watch these videos, as barbaric and depraved as they are, when you are discussing the selling of body parts while you're eating a salad, like you're talking about a stock tip, and then the latest video where you are right on the precipice of discussing homicide. If you look at the quote, folks who come in after delivering but still want a procedure, what does that mean? If that's not partial birth abortion, what does it mean? The people that I work for, Shannon, do not want to fund that. So, you know, people could disagree about a woman's right to choose and Roe versus Wade and its progeny, but this is barbaric and it is depraved. And if the president wants to insist on government shutdown so he can fund something that I didn't even think Planned Parenthood was necessary after Obamacare. I thought Obamacare provided health care and access to everyone. So why do we need Planned Parenthood to prop up the abortion industry? I'm not going to fund it.
Okay, are there Democrats, pro-life or not, people that just have concerns about these videos that you think will join Republican efforts?
Well, I don't know. I would think all people of good conscience would just be sickened by what they have watched. Now, will there be folks out there who are able to rationalize it? I'm sure there will be, and I suspect that there'll be a funding mechanism this fall and there'll be no government shutdown. And make no mistake, I don't want a government shutdown, and neither do the 18 people who signed Mickey Mulvaney's letter. But, you know, Shannon, you have to stand for something as a people. I mean, what defines us as a people? I am speaking to a death penalty conference tomorrow. There is more sobriety in discussing the heinous acts of death row inmates than there was in the discussion of selling baby body parts. So if that does not define us as a people, then perhaps I'm in the wrong line of work and I may be in the wrong republic. The America that I believe in, the people that I represent, do not expect me to fund the barbarism, the depravity that I have seen.
Based on these numbers, 897 children will lose their lives to an abortion completed by Planned Parenthood each and every day. Why do I find this horrific? Because I actually have a lot in common with them. I was meant to be one of them. I should have been just another statistic, but by the grace of God, I am more than a statistic. I come here to you today as a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a master's level prepared social worker, and yes, as an abortion survivor. From a botched abortion to the dreaded complication, a child who lives, I've been called just about everything that you can imagine. But if you want to turn your attention up to the screen, as you can see in my medical records from 1977, kind of right there in the middle, saline infusion for an abortion was done, but was unsuccessful. And in other times throughout my medical records, you will read statements like, the complication of my birth mother's pregnancy was a saline infusion abortion. You could certainly say that saline infusion complicated the pregnancy. It has taken years to unravel the secrets surrounding my survival, to have contact with my biological family, and even medical professionals that cared for me. And although there are still unanswered questions, what I do know is that my life was intended to be ended by that abortion. And even after I survived, my life was in jeopardy. You wouldn't know it by looking at me today, but in August of 1977, I also survived a saline infusion abortion. And as Gianna shared, that saline infusion abortion involves injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding the preborn child. The intent of that toxic salt solution is to scald the child to death from the outside in. For days, I soaked in that toxic salt solution, and on the 5th day of the procedure, my biological mother, who was a 19-year-old college student, delivered me after her labor was induced. I should have been delivered dead that day as a successful abortion. In 2013, I learned through contact with my biological mother's family that not only was this abortion forced upon her against her will at the age of 19, but also that it was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, a nurse, who delivered me in this final step of the abortion procedure at St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, Iowa. Unfortunately, I also learned that when my grandmother realized that the abortion had not succeeded in ending my life, she demanded that I be left to die. I may never know how exactly 2 nurses who were on staff that day found out about me, but what I do know is that their willingness to fight for medical care to be provided to me ultimately sustained my life. And I know where children like me were left to die at St. Luke's Hospital. I met a nurse there who delivered a child much like me in 1976. She delivered a little boy after a failed saline infusion abortion. But she followed her superior's orders, and she placed him there in a utility closet in a bucket of formaldehyde to be picked up later as medical waste after he was left there to die alone. A bucket of formaldehyde in a utility closet was meant to be my fate after I survived that abortion attempt. I weighed a little less than 3 pounds when I survived. I suffered from jaundice, severe respiratory problems, and seizures for an extended period of time. And one of the first notations in my medical records by a doctor after I survived is that I looked like I was about 31 weeks gestational age when I was delivered. Despite the miracle of my survival, the doctor's prognosis for my life was very poor initially. My adoptive parents were told that I would suffer from multiple disabilities throughout my life. Yet here I am today, perfectly healthy. Yet I know it isn't just how abortion ends the life of children like me that isn't talked about in today's world. It's also not discussed what happens to children like me who live. I can tell you we are your friend, your neighbor, your coworker, and you would likely never guess by passing us on the street that we survived what we did. In my work as the founder of the Abortion Survivors Network, I have had contact with 203 of these other survivors. Letters from some of those survivors have been submitted to this committee. I'm here today to share my story to not only highlight the horror of abortion taking place at Planned Parenthood, but to give a voice to other survivors like me, and most importantly, to give a name, a face, and a voice to the hundreds of thousands of children who will have their lives ended by Planned Parenthood this year alone. As you consider the horrors of what happens at Planned Parenthood each day, I would urge you to remember my story and Gianna's too. We may not have survived abortions at Planned Parenthood, but the expectation for our lives to be ended by abortion are the very same as those who do lose their lives there. And I have long believed that if my birth mother's abortion would have taken place at a Planned Parenthood, I would not be here today. Completing over 300,000 abortions a year provides them with the experience to make sure that failures like me don't exist. As a fellow American and as a fellow human being, I deserve the same right to life, the same equal protection under the law as each and every one of you.